Hey everyone, and welcome to SkillCapped. In this guide, we'll be teaching you the best ways that you can hard counter smurfs on the enemy team. Despite what most people think, it is possible to beat smurfs if you just know these certain tricks to it. Of course, the game will be harder, but they aren't unbeatable, and as you're about to learn, there are some easy ways that you can take advantage of the enemy smurf that can make beating them a way more realistic task. Alright, for our question of the day, what do you think Valorant should do to help deal with the smurfing problem? It seems like with all competitive games these days, smurfing is becoming a bigger and bigger problem that players face. Some possible solutions that have been suggested is limiting the amount of accounts a player can create based on their IP address or hardware ID or phone number through two-factor verification. However, of course, there will always be a way to skirt around this. Another example is what we've seen in League of Legends, where Riot has created a smurf queue where if your account gets detected as a smurf, you face long queue times where you get matched with other smurfs. Personally, I think a fantastic first step would be to simply start by implementing a system where players get the rating that they lost refunded if it's detected they lost a game against a cheater or a smurf. To make the comparison to when you lose a game against a cheater, even if that cheater's account is banned, you still don't feel the greatest as you've lost that ranking unfairly against them. I know that if I logged in and got a notification that a cheater was detected in a previous game I lost and I got some rank refunded, I would feel way better about the situation, and I think that could also be applied to the lower ranks where smurfs are a bigger problem. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, as I'm really curious what the community's thoughts are on the smurfing problem. Alright, so let's jump straight into it with our first tip to countering smurfs, and that's with strategies you can implement to avoid the smurf altogether. So when you hit tab and you see that on the enemy team there's this one player who has an insane KDA and is clearly carrying the rest of the team, then you need to gather some intel on them. For example, if you're on attack and the enemy is playing defense, then you need to figure out what position on the map that they're playing. For example, if you're on the map Haven and the enemy smurf is playing C site, then you need to focus on attacking A site. And when you do attack A site, don't be slow about it where you give that smurf time to rotate to help in the defense. Instead, go for a rush on the opposite side of the map that the smurf is on, overwhelm the regular players, and get in that post-plant scenario. And the next part is key. Once you get the spike planted, don't start peeking. Instead, set up crossfires where the enemy has to push into the site and take gunfights against multiple opponents at different locations. One of the biggest mistakes players make is peeking and taking isolated 1v1s against the smurf, where they will obviously have the better mechanics and win that fight. Instead, stay in safe locations and either set up a crossfire or swing off an enemy's contact so that you can overwhelm the smurf from different angles at once. Now, if you're the one that's playing defense, it can be a bit harder as the smurf can choose where they want to attack, so it's much harder to avoid them. For that reason, you need to do two things on defense. First, stop peeking aggressively into taking those straight aim duels, as if you run into the smurf, he'll win that fight and easily then rush onto site and win the round. Instead, you want to play safe locations inside or near site where, again, you're going to play crossfires or swing off a teammate. At the same time, use abilities to delay their push and look to fast rotate with your team. So for example, say you're playing A site on split. Well, you hear enemies at the start of the round. Call for rotates immediately, get smokes down, throw mollies, use abilities to prevent an immediate rush by the opponent into site. This will help you stack defenders on the site and force the enemy to push in where they have to clear multiple angles at once. This will increase your chances of trade killing on the smurf and overwhelm him with the number advantage. Essentially, you want to avoid where the smurf is playing. Avoid aggressive peaks where you're going to take isolated aim duels and look to pair up with a teammate and set up crossfires or swing from a different angle off contact to trade kill. And if you want to unlock your true potential and get the rank you've always wanted, then head to our hyper improvement system on our website, SkillCapped.com, link in the description below. It's there, you'll find over 700 premium Valorant guides organized in structured courses that are easy to follow and optimized to get you to improve as fast as possible. All of this can be unlocked with no risk with our rank improvement guarantee, so click the link in the description below, head to SkillCapped.com, and get the rank you've always wanted. Alright, and this leads into our second tip for countering smurfs, and that is to realize that they aren't gods or pros at the game. The vast majority of the time the smurf you'll be facing is platinum or diamond. These are the kind of ranks where if an actual pro plays in, they will make these platinum or diamond players look like they're bronze or iron. What I'm trying to say is the smurfs you're facing are not perfect players, and they make tons of mistakes you can actually take advantage of. Instead, typically the advantage a smurf has is just better aim or overall mechanics. Think about it, has this situation ever happened to you where you load into a game and one of your teammates tells you that a player on the enemy team is a smurf and just carried the previous game and that you guys are doomed? As soon as players realize they're facing a smurf, one of three things will happen. Either they get nervous and start playing extremely scared, they'll get tilted and give up on the game almost immediately, assuming they've already lost, or they have an ego about it and decide they're going to take on that smurf and prove that they're better than them. Either way, when someone says there's a smurf on the enemy team, rarely does it have a positive psychological effect on the team. And so try to be cognizant of this fact that sometimes just the perception of a smurf is what gives them a massive advantage. This idea that it's impossible to beat them or the emotions that come with it, these will throw you off your game. Instead, realize these are not pros. These are usually platinum or diamond players, and that they are 100% beatable. Alright, so with that out of the way, let's jump into more strategies and techniques that you can use to counter smurfs. Just with the first tip where we talked about identifying the smurf and the locations they're playing and then avoiding them, well, you want to do the exact same thing but with the enemy team's weakest player. Here's the thing, a lot of the times when someone is smurfing, they're actually boosting a friend or someone they queued with. And this player that's getting boosted is actually worse than you, just like how you might be worse than the smurf. And so you want to check the scoreboard every round, find that guy on the enemy team that is clearly playing way below the current ranked skill level and is struggling. So for example, if you're attacking, this would mean identifying what area of the map that they're playing. You then want to do the opposite of what we recommended to do against the smurf. You want to play aggressive and look to take those aim duels against them at the start of the round. And again, the reason we're saying to play fast is you want to get that 1v1 against the weak player before the enemy team has time to rotate the smurf. Now, if you're the defenders instead, here's the thing, weak players tend to be very predictable. And so often that weak player on the enemy team when they're on attack side will end up playing the same way almost every round. So this could just be noticing he isn't grouping with the smurf on attack, and instead, let's say when the enemy attacks A site on split, he lurks around mid. Well, that's great. When you see the enemy team attack A site, look for the fight in mid against him to take him out early. A huge part of beating a smurf is not giving him what he wants, instead picking off his weak teammates to repeatedly put him in a scenario where he has the number disadvantage. By avoiding the smurf and picking off his weak teammates, you can then overwhelm them with numbers or crossfires that create impossible scenarios for them to win by themselves. So now that you have some strategic concepts you can use to counter smurfs, let's talk about how to actually beat them in a gunfight. So here's the thing, if you try to go rifle against a smurf, you will probably lose that fight more than any other weapon combination. This is because the rifles are the most skill-intensive weapons in the game, and so often in rifle fights the player with a better aim and mechanics will win. But in Valorant there are far more weapons than just the rifles. And so if you're forced into scenarios where you know you have to take fights against the smurf, then look to use different weapons that can help bridge this skill gap. For example, if you are on defense on bind and you know the enemy smurf is consistently hitting B site from hookah, well, buy a judge and play inside hookah. You can even ask a teammate to set up a crossfire with you inside hookah for an even bigger advantage. The judge will give you one-shot potential at the body, an easier target to hit, while the enemy smurf will have a rifle and have to land a headshot. This will help bridge the skill gap and gives you a fighting chance against them despite them having better aim. And this isn't just reserved only for hookah. For example, you could play inside container on B site and just let the smurf rush into site and then catch them off guard with the shotgun. There are a lot of guns right now that are like this. For example, on pistol round, don't buy a ghost or classic pistol against a smurf where you know you won't win those aim duels. Instead, go for frenzy and light armor and just run and gun close range and try to overwhelm them with raw DPS before they can even have time to double headshot you. The Stinger is another great example of a weapon that can beat out a rifle at close ranges without having to match their aim, as you can just run and gun and aim for the body instead of having to have perfect movement and an aim for the head. And if all of this wasn't enough, you also have the Operator. You can use this to hold very far angles that are hard for riflers to hit, or you can hold tight angles where you have a chance to hit a shot on them and then get behind cover before the enemy team has time to react. The point here is don't just try to buy a rifle and look to aim duel the smurf. Try to buy specific weapons that are stronger than the rifle in certain situations and then look to get into fights in those scenarios. Alright, so moving on, our next tip to beat smurfs is to consciously use your abilities way more often. Like we said earlier, often the smurfs you'll be facing are platinum or diamond players who have superior aim and mechanics, but are often lacking in strategy or decision making. Often, they are just relying on their aim to carry them in these smurf games, and so you want to avoid these raw aim duels. And a fantastic way to do that is to make sure you're using your abilities before you take any kind of gunfight. For example, if you're going to peek a corner and you're a flash agent, well, make sure you're actually using flashes before you do so. I know that sounds self-explanatory, but a lot of the times players make the mistake of holding on to their abilities out of fear that they'll have a better opportunity to use them later. Don't do this. When you pair ability usage with our previous tips of identifying where the smurf is playing, you can often just overwhelm them with both numbers and abilities that make up for their superior aim. This is especially true if you're playing defense, where you should never be dying against a smurf without having used pretty much all of your abilities. The reason for this is that on defense, even if you use your abilities and don't get a kill off of them, you are delaying the attacker's push and buying time for your team to rotate and help win with the numbers advantage. And I know you're probably envisioning using smokes or mollies to delay a push, but even throwing a flash and not even peeking off of it can stall out a push and make the attacker scared and hesitate. This is the same idea with Raze's Boombot or Grenade. Coincidentally, this ability-heavy usage, like many of the tips in this guide, is actually how you should be playing the game anyways. For example, if you're hitting a site as attackers, you should be using Sova's Owl Drone to clear angles first, then dropping smokes at key choke points, then flashing in, using other utility on the angles that haven't been cleared yet by the drone like Raze's Boombot, Grenade, or Breach's Fault Line. Think of how insanely hard this would be to play against as a smurf. You're sitting on site, and a bunch of low-ranked players are throwing in recon darts, owl drones, you're getting flash, naded, there's smokes going down. Then all of a sudden, they all flood in together to trade kill. Doesn't matter if you're Radiant at that point, you're going to die. And the best part of this strategy is that it doesn't require you to have insane aim to execute or like some crazy mechanic raise double satchel combo. Essentially, each player on the team just needs to use one of their abilities in a very straightforward way. It's when they're all combined together that they become insurmountable for the smurf. So if you notice a lot of gunfights are happening, you or your teammates aren't using a lot of abilities, well, take the role of the in-game leader and assign each player a job in that round, respective of each of their agent's abilities. And this perfectly leads into our next tip, and that's to incorporate a strategy known as alt orb farming. So in the previous section, we established how abilities can be extremely important when it comes to bridging the aiming skill gap. Well, the strongest abilities in the game are often an agent's ultimate. And recently, at the highest level of play, there's been an uptick in an alt farming strategy. We actually created a guide on it if you want to check it out. But basically, it's when at the start of the round you look to take an alt orb. This can be done on a variety of agents at key locations of the map where it's very safe to do. For example, the B-Long alt orb on bind is extremely easy to take on defense by just smoking B-Long and rushing it. We actually covered all of the spots and ways of farming alt orbs in our main guide on this strategy. So we won't be going into that kind of detail here, but one thing I will say is try to integrate alt orbs into your gameplay much more when facing a smurf. This can be as simple as grouping with your team on attack and taking the path that has the alt orb on it and grabbing it along the way. Or if you're playing defense, it can be using an ability to snag an alt orb at the start of the round or just grabbing it before you rotate. By doing this, you'll have your ultimate up way more often and much earlier, and this can be enough to win fights against a smurf regardless of how good their aim is. For example, a Raze ultimate just guarantees a trade kill on a smurf. Sage ultimate can help get the man advantage that's so important, or Phoenix ult can allow you to entry and make contact on the smurf to allow teammates to trade kill. I'm sure you get the idea, and so just like in the previous section where we mentioned about consciously using more abilities when facing smurfs to help overcome the aim difference, you want to farm those free alt orbs as ultimates are the most powerful abilities in the game. And for our last tip, you may laugh, it may be a bit controversial, but it's effective, and it's to play a little psychological warfare. Here's the thing, let's all be honest here, smurfs have a tendency to have an ego about them and clash with their teammates, especially when they start to lose some rounds. What you can look to do is fan those flames, or in some cases, just start the fire yourself. A classic trick is after the enemy team has lost a few rounds is to ask the enemy team in all chat if the smurf is raging and blaming them just like he did to you in the last game. Of course, you didn't actually play with the smurf last game, but the enemy team doesn't know that. Often this will bait a player on the enemy team to respond in all chat confirming that the smurf is blaming them, thinking that you're on their side. Your goal here is to get the smurf and their teammates to start arguing with each other in all chat. This will lead to the enemy team being tilted, not coordinating or playing with each other, or in some extreme cases, throwing on purpose or in general not trying as they don't want their teammates to win. Now, you don't make this too obvious, often you just need a little spark to get things going. For example, you can simply ask the enemy team in all chat if the player is smurfing. If the enemy team has been arguing with each other, they will often give some sort of response to your question that indicates this, and you can continue to fan the flames from there. Now, that does not mean antagonizing them by talking trash, as that can actually backfire and get them to try harder or band together. Instead, you can just ask a lot of neutral, open-ended questions. For example, maybe there's a round where the enemy team rushes on attack and the smurf leads the charge, gets killed, and his teammates don't swing with him and instead just kind of hide and stall out. As you can imagine, the smurf is going to be a bit tilted. Well, simply throw a question mark in all chat and often you'll bait a response by someone on the enemy team shifting blame onto a teammate. As ridiculous as this section may sound, you have to keep in mind that smurfs often have a big ego, or in a lot of cases, maybe their main account was banned or chat restricted. By playing into that, you can often either get the smurf tilted and play worse, or just cause the entire enemy team to fall apart and start blaming each other. On top of this, since it's not the smurf's main account, they're often much more willing to throw games on purpose or rage quit if they get tilted since they don't care about the account. Given the possible high reward with very minimal effort on your part, trying to stir up an argument on the enemy team with some quote-unquote innocent questions in all chat can actually be quite an effective way to beat smurfs. And remember, if you want to improve fast, win more gunfights, and get the rank you've always wanted, then there's nothing better than our hyper improvement system at SkillCapped.com. Check it out, link in the description below. Otherwise, you know the deal, like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to keep up with the meta and get more premium guides with one goal in mind, helping you become a better player. We here at SkillCapped want to thank you for watching until the end, and we'll catch you in the next one.